back to the M3 podcast. This week we got Logan and Philip on from the MMG squad. We got Matt on.
Right on.
So I actually, on purpose, we've had dinner. We had some really good brownies. They're not pop brownies. So.
not those brownies.
Or I don't know. We don't know yet. So you can
we'll
continue
find out
on
30
the podcast.
minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes in, you might find out. But on purpose, I haven't really asked you a lot of the work side of things. I haven't jumped in on that forefront.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be ingesting it and taking it in first time with everybody on here. So where do you want to start the story? Where do you want to start the podcast?
Oh, shit. First thing, I just want to start off with gratitude. Philip and I, we connected like 7 years ago.
Beginning of my real estate career.
Way early. And he's actually the guy that introduced me to Andy Frisella and the MF CEO podcast.
Yeah.
Before it, and I was like, I remember pulling up the podcast. I think when you introduced me to it, it was already like at episode 74.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how has this even gone? And I was like, holy shit, there's someone. It was the first time I had somebody speaking out loud my inner voice. Like I have an Andy Frisella in here. And
that you're supposed to hide from everybody.
But I've been in corporate for so long. I was so vanillaed out. And I was like, wait, someone's actually making a living saying this stuff out loud? This is allowable? Anyway, so when Philip and I met back then and just have been in relationship since, and when I saw that he had moved over to you guys and we had met briefly a few years back, and we reconnected, I was like, hey man, if there's anything I can ever do to bring value to the world and help you guys out in any way, like I'm happy to. And so the invite to come on here has just been like 10 out of 10. I'm just super honored to be here to just even hang out with you guys. And
I appreciate being
I don't
here.
think people really get like, you see the reels and you do the things, but like the vibe is so family, and to be invited in is like, I don't want to be like weird about it, but it's like, it's kind of sacred. Like, don't want to fuck it up. Right.
Like, if you fuck it up, you're not invited back.
Like, I gotta bring it. So no, so I'm just honored to be able to be here to participate, and I'm here to have some fun, share some stories, and hopefully, change some lives out there.
Yeah. And that's ultimately the podcast as a whole, what we have targeted to do with so much of it. And there was days where the podcast didn't get a lot of views. There was days that it seemed very bleak out there, but we run into that one person that they're like, hey, when I'm at work, I listen to this and I really needed it. And it was at spots that I didn't think our knowledge level was to the point of somebody that would thinking somebody would listen to it. So
just the craziest times too, like in our old office in the River Market, we all parked in this one lot and all of our vehicles have an MMG sticker on it. And we're walking in from work one day, and in the back alley, there's some guys doing work on like fiber optic cables, and they stop us and they're like, you guys are like MMG M3 podcast. We listen to your podcast at work every day. You guys are really inspiring. And we're like, man, I never thought that we would reach, an audience, like just random people to begin with, but like an audience that's doesn't even have anything to do with owning a business, just gains perspective in life from it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's when there was like 7 of us rocking out.
Yeah.
So it wasn't
early days.
And they were like talking about MMG like it was this bigger than life thing. I'm like, guys, we just got out of the basement. Like, that was filmed in my basement.
But isn't that like what's fascinating about that? I think it's like at all the levels, when there's any kind of external validation, you're like, but no, like you don't get it. Like we're still bootstrapping this stuff. I still like there's that impostery level to it where you're like, are we really there though? Like, yeah.
It definitely happens for a long time. And then I think there was a shift at some point that I feel like we really were bringing a lot of value to space. That like, I feel like we focused on that self-development. We focused on that personal side of things. We focused on the business side of things. There was a point that I feel like we broke that threshold that I'm like, we're supposed to be here.
Cool. That's awesome.
But it took a little while there when it was a 7-man basement crew and people would like say stuff to us out. And I'm like,
it's still weird when someone brings it up when you're not expecting. Like I was at lunch with my dad on Saturday, shout out to him. And we were just sitting there eating lunch and he's like, listen to the podcast with Derek. I was like, really? Okay. What'd you think? He's like, thought it was really good. Here's a few pieces of feedback that, I noticed from it. And just when you don't expect it.
Yeah. I talk to my dad every single week, normally Wednesday or Thursday, and he listens to the podcast. He gives like his takeaway. He's like, dude, that was really cool about a story about like X, Y, and Z. And I'm just like, you run in, like we had a client come on that, I mean, he's listened to every single one of them. Like early days, I didn't think anybody listened to him. Like people just dogged on our reels. I was like, it's rough out there. But just have to do it. Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. So shoot, like, so who am I? Why am I here? So I'm Matt Lewczenko. Matt is short for Mateusz. I'm from Poland. Okay. We emigrated to the United States when I was 3 years old. We actually left. We escaped Poland 2 weeks before there was martial law in 1982, and we got political asylum in Germany, into an immigration camp in Austria. My dad's family was already in the United States, so I spent 6 months in an immigration camp in the Austrian Alps when I was a baby, about 3 years old. And that was like kind of the earliest memories I had, just I guess because of all the chaos that was going on. I remember Austria. I remember, there was a van that would come up every day that would take the grown-ups, and in the back there was just 5-gallon buckets with a 2x6 in the back. You would sit and it would go down for work and those kind of things. And so we came to the United States after my dad's family got us visas in New Jersey. And my dad's brother-in-law was a Vietnam vet that worked at a apartment complex, and my dad was like painting and stuff for him and doing some side gigs. And my dad's an artist, so he does like, I don't know if you like deep cutting crystal awards like Lenox Crystal and stuff, where he learned all that, and he got recruited to Lenox Crystal in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so I moved to Pittsburgh, and we lived outside of Pittsburgh in a small coal mining community, 4,000 people. And I had, what was an interesting upbringing, I had an artist dad who was also still an entrepreneur as well. So I had like the creative and the entrepreneur as well. And then my mom would always find work for insurance and such. And we never, growing up, you never know like what your status is. You just grow up. Yeah. And I didn't realize like, oh, people have more than 2 pairs of pants, and like, oh, like not everyone has a guy that shows up every year with a box of toys that you just trade out your toys from that box of toys. And we just, that was just the guy. It wasn't Santa.
Yeah.
It was
he was
like
telling everybody,
Joe.
he's like, that's Santa.
It's like, that's Santa. Right. So like growing up, like I never felt like we were lacking anything, but we never really had anything, but it was always like we had enough. And I was kind of thrust into entrepreneurship early. I was, I don't know, 3rd, 4th grade. I had a paper route. I was cutting lawns, shoveling, like, and it was like, I wanted a bike. And my dad said, cool, make some money. And I'm like, how do you make money? And he's like, do stuff, like bring value. So I was working early. That's some of the earliest memories I just remember is like, oh, well, what can I do to like make some money? And then that just kind of grew, and then we relocated a little bit, and I got kind of bit by in undergrad and grad school. I got bit by the theater bug. Like I failed miserably early on in college. I went to play football, and I graduated in fraternity, and like was uninvited back to some schools. And and I was really just allegedly, no, very very specifically, was not invited back to a couple of schools. I did such a good job of showing them how hard you can go on the fun side, that I was just struggling, looking for any kind of like discipline and structure. So I enlisted in the military thinking that was going to be my thing.
So question, when you were growing up,
this
is something I see happen with a lot of people, and I know I was guilty of it. When you were growing up, did you have a very, very high level of discipline from your parents on what you were doing? And
it was external. It wasn't internal.
But
it was. I'm a super procrastinator. Like I'm a lazy guy. Like they were on me.
Yeah. So,
like in a loving way, but on me.
so that's where I felt like when my brother and I grew up, like our dad was so disciplined on us, like so regimented. My whole life, like I knew of just getting up at 5 o'clock because that's when dad woke the whole house up. Or like kids were like, oh yeah, I slept in on the weekend. We watched movies and we played on the computer. I'm like, what? Like, that's not our household. Like, granted, our dad did very well. It was just, even though he did well, our dad was always very clear that he goes, I have money. He goes, you don't.
Yeah.
He goes, I give you a roof to live under.
Yeah.
And it was like, if you wanted something, you had to go work for it. But then it's, I think a lot of times when college hits, I think you lose a lot of direction because now all of a sudden you went from this like outside force, it's making you do X, Y, and Z and has you so disciplined that you hit college and it's just like, I was a train that just derailed 10 ways to Tuesday when I got to college.
1,000%.
I was like, oh my God, I can be out till 3 o'clock in the morning. Like,
Yeah.
This is wild.
Yeah, you
Like,
sleep till 6.
yeah. I'm like, I mean, I could close my blinds, sleep as long as I wanted.
Yeah, till dinner.
I skipped classes. Like, I mean, there was nobody telling me what to do. And I just don't think I didn't understand how to handle that.
Yeah. Yeah. Two memories pop up as you're describing that, right? Like, so my first bike, I wanted a mountain bike so bad. Like I wanted like a mountain bike. And when I got the mountain bike, the first thing I wanted to do is ride in the mud, right? I had knobby tires. I rode in the mud and I brought it home and I put it away. And my dad says, get up. I'm like, what? And he goes, you got to clean your bike. And he goes, I'm like, it's a mountain bike, Dad. It's made for dirt. And he goes, no. You just paid for this with your own money. You don't make enough money to not take care of this. Like, clean your bike and it'll last. And I'm like, but it's a mountain bike, Dad. He goes, if you don't clean your bike, I'm getting rid of your bike, right? And I just remember being so mad, washing my stupid mountain bike that I just put mud on because it's made for mud. And it was that. And then my grandfather, who never decided to speak English, interestingly enough, but he was here, and he communicated with everybody. He was like the smoothest guy ever. I remember one of the things he said is, we're too broke to ever buy cheap. Okay. So one of the things he said is like, just because we don't have money doesn't mean you don't buy quality, because if you buy quality, you only have to buy it once. You only have to pay once for quality. And that was one of those things that really stuck with me early on with my mindset around value, that value isn't about having a lot of money. Value is about really understanding that value only hurts once. Cheap costs over and over. Yeah. Like, I don't know if you ever bought Cutco. That's like the number one things they say is like, how many knives do you have in your drawer? You buy cheap knives over and over and over. Just buy these once. And they're right. Yeah. We have the same block that we bought when we got married. So like when you bring that up, like those are the two memories that come up pretty hardcore around that.
Yeah. And that's where I think so when you're going through the college world, because you talk about being really good at having fun. Like I was really good at having fun.
I killed it. I was like, I'm a 10 out of 10. On
like that. I was sitting there at one point and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm an alcoholic. I'm like, I drink 7 days a week. I cash like a fifth of Jack before I start partying each night. Like it was a problem. Like for sure. Like I look back at it now, I'm like, that was wild. And, like,
we're still alive.
Like not a good idea. But I was so derailed. And I think that trying to find that pathway for people at a young age is so hard when you've had these kind of training wheels, per se, that I think are, as your parents, have like kept you on that bike and kept things going. All of a sudden they take them off, and then you're hauling ass. You just eat shit.
You just go off the deep
hard.
end.
Yeah, and it was like, and I felt like I fell and I fell and I fell and I fell. Mm-hmm. And when you're coming out of college, what was it like finding that way?
Yeah.
Because to your point, also like I was always the younger kid that like I had no problem going to do the work to get the things, but it was like it was the tangible thing that I wanted. So it was like if the prize was there, I'd go work for it. College, I didn't know what the prize was I was looking for anymore.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting, right? Like my parents did a pretty good job of like giving me every opportunity to explore and do the things, and they would kind of sprinkle in on what things I should like consider And I never liked it. And what's interesting is even though I didn't do well at school, like college early on, I wasn't really motivated. I wasn't driven. I wasn't challenged. And so it wasn't until I took a theater class almost as a joke with like this girl that I just really wanted to take the class with. And then I took the class and I met this one professor. His name is Norman Roberts, and he's still in Bethlehem, PA. And he was like, I wish I could like describe, he was like the stereotypical like intense arts theater guy that's also like a Vietnam vet that has stories, but comes in and he like comes at you hard. And I remember I was kind of a jerk off in the class, and there was an assignment that we had to do that was like, I had to do it, but I didn't do it. And he's like, why didn't you do it? And I just was like doing my same old shtick of like, I don't know. It didn't really feel like it. And he looked me dead in the eye in front of like 17 other people. And he like F-bombed me and like lit me up in the middle of the class. No one's ever called me on my shit. No one. And I'm sitting there going, at first I was in shock, and then I got mad. And then I was like, oh yeah, you want to do that? You want to play this game? You want to play this game? I'm like, guess what? I'm in your world forever now. I'm going to major in theater. I'm going to be here forever. I'm like, you can't get rid of me now.
What a wild retreat. What a wild comeback.
I'll show you.
I'm
Uno reversal.
here.
Guess
I'll
what?
show you.
Guess what? You will never get rid of me. And so guess what? That's what I did. And I started showing up. Like, and he pulled me, and we had like office hours one time, and he's like, listen, he's like, you could be talented, who knows, but like, you're so in your way. You're so like just your own worst enemy. I don't know what to tell you, but like, you should not do this. And I was like, bet, I'm here. I'm your guy. Like, you're never getting rid of me. And from that moment on, Dean's list. Auditioned for every show, got in every show. Went, and like, I was the guy now. I'm like, you're never going to get rid of me. And then someone was like, oh, well, you go to this undergrad, and then they actually pay for you to go to grad school. You can continue to do this, and you can like have a life in the theater as a performer and a professor. Now, the side of it that like I wasn't expecting was, this is where I believe like so many people are trying to like manufacture what their purpose is, and you can't. You have to explore. You have to try things out. You've got to take things on, because you discover purpose. You can't create it. You can't manifest it. You can't journal it. You have to discover it. And sometimes it comes through the most obscure and ridiculous paths. I wasn't expecting my life to be lit up by this challenge, but then also be wrapped in this world where I was like, ooh, I love the sociological concept of live theater, of being able to take storytelling to change society through holding up a mirror, right? Like, and then learning the history of how aristocracy and like tyrants could be actually made fun of, or like societies could be challenged to change through storytelling. And that's where I really fell in love with storytelling, through theater. And then once I found it, like, oh, you can actually go in and make a living doing it, cool. And that's what brought me to Kansas City. So when I went to Temple University in Philadelphia, I went in undergrad there. They have a training program to get you prepared for what's called the URTAs, which is the University and Resident Theater Association mass auditions. And they hold them in 3 different cities. There's New York, Chicago, and San Francisco. And you're in front of like 95 different casting directors and graduate training programs all across the country. And so I went to New York and I auditioned, and I got called back to have private interviews with UMKC, the University of Iowa, Roosevelt University in Chicago, and then one of the offsite companies was the University of California, San Diego Old Globe Theater. And so that's when I met Dale Rose, who was the director of professional theater training in Kansas City, and started exploring what it would be like coming to Kansas City. And what a lot of people don't know is that Kansas City is the largest or the highest professional theater per capita market in the country. There's more professional theater in Kansas City than Chicago and Seattle. A lot of people don't know that. I didn't know that. And
in the beginning, I did not think the story was going to. This was how the whole thing
Going to-
started. I did not think we'd end up in Theater Talk coming to KC via Theater Talk.
yeah, well,
Like,
hang on, it's about to get real.
yeah, but it is pretty crazy when we just had people on, like, hearing the roadmap
Mhm.
that before it even started, when we talk about
Yeah.
people saying that, oh, I understand.
Yeah,
Like, don't tell me you understand. Like,
right.
every single person's story is so vastly different, and you have had way different obstacles to overcome than I have, or Philip, or Logan, and that's why I think this is so cool that we look at from coming over here, growing up, going to college, getting into theater, like, to where, I mean, we haven't got into the business world yet.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
right now, how old are you when you came to KC?
It was 2003, so I was 24 years old.
So 24, showing up to KC for theater.
Yeah.
All right, continue
I didn't
on.
even
Yeah.
know that about you.
Yeah, so
Theater.
Wild start.
So 2003, came to UMKC. I was a first-year grad student. And really just, I loved that totally just immersive process, like going real hard in the professional actor training program there. My second year of school is when I met my wife. So she was brought in as the new marketing director for the theater program. And I remember the summer before second year walking in, and she's sitting there with one of the admins, and I was like, oh, shoot. And I was talking to one of my guys, and I was in a relationship at the time, and I was like, man, if I were single, like, she's it. Like, that's the one. And we ended up becoming pretty good friends throughout that year. And then it was a long distance relationship for me. It fell apart. And so we started dating my third year of grad school. And I was so at the end of grad school, you also audition in New York in front of casting directors for, excuse me, professional representation. And when we went, I had 3 appointments with some agencies in New York for representation to move. And I remember we had just started dating and coming back and going, what are we going to do? And we were actually visiting her family up in Minnesota. And I was talking about like possibly going back, and she like was crying. She said, what about it? I was like, well, maybe. I was like, hold on. And so I just took a professional gig in Kansas City at the Unicorn Theater, which gave me my professional stage actor equity card, the Actors Equity Association. So I became a member of the professional union on that show. And I was like, you know what? I created some relationships here. Let me stay here. Let me flesh this out. At the time, I was also doing a lot of the educational.
So, quick question on this
yeah.
too. When you're in the theater world, was
Yeah.
there like something you like specialize in, or is there like, what kind of shows are you doing?
So I didn't do any musicals. A lot of people were like, oh, so you do musicals? I was like, no, your experience is high school. Like, we did like hardcore, in your face, dark or funny, like straight theater. Like,
Is it like it was like Starlight?
no,
No.
no.
That too.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was like I did classical training, but then it was also like a lot of contemporary, avant-garde, and new works. So we were working with like British playwrights, we were working with local playwrights, we were working with just some of the hardcore, like some of the shows that we did were like intense and insane. Like they were really, really cool productions. So what I specialize in is storytelling. Right.
So would you help with the overall, like, were you just getting a role in it, or were you getting help with production side, like any of the actual storytelling, or like how to modify it? Like, I don't know.
No,
I've never been involved in theater.
Yeah,
so I
no,
don't
so
know that.
yeah, so like your role as the actor is to bring the words to life in the most truest way possible, in alignment with the vision from the director.
Okay.
And so the director might come in and have a concept of what the production's going to be like, and they may make some adjustments based on style or whatever with whatever their vision is for the show. And then my job is to tell the best story from the perspective of my character.
Okay.
And so one of the biggest misconceptions about acting and theater is like, oh, well, you must be like a really good liar. And I'm like, actually, interestingly enough, it's the opposite. You have to be a great truth teller. You have to be able to tell the story as authentically from the first person position in a positive way as possible. Because here's what's interesting, a lot of people don't know, is that the villain and the hero are both doing the best that they think they should be doing at the time. So whether you're the villain or the hero, that person's operating from a position of everything I'm doing is for the benefit of the world, right? So they're operating from a position of positivity, whether they're the villain or the hero. The difference is the hero and the villain, they've both experienced the same pain. The hero has made a commitment to make sure nobody ever experiences that pain, and the villain makes a commitment to make sure everyone experiences what they've experienced, right? And so the story changes based on the perspective of how they perceive the injustice. And so that plays into a further conversation moving forward.
You would have rewound 150-something episodes. This is the first theater talk we've had, and I'm pretty intrigued.
Yeah. From 1 to 10, how hard is that? Like,
I'm assuming like 11.
From 1 to 10, being in that position, how hard is that? Because most people look at you, like you just said, you have to basically lie your way through it. But you just flipped it on its head. So being in those shoes,
well, from
how hard is that from your perspective?
So here's the thing. I think everyone can experience or talk about an experience of any time that they went to a show and it was bad. And those are people struggling, really just releasing and telling the story as authentically as possible with as little. So one of the phrases that Norman Roberts, my theater professor, that at the beginning that I thought I was taking this class as a joke, he was so deep. And he says, the hardest thing about acting is not to. The hardest thing about acting is not to, which also translates into the hardest thing about selling is not to.
Yeah. Just like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
That's where my head went.
So this is exactly it. The hardest thing about this, what that is to not to. And all that has to do is when you've prepared, when you've learned, when you've internalized, you can then be, you can become, you can live in the moment. And I think the biggest mistake so many salespeople and professionals do is they don't spend enough time practicing, internalizing, really understanding the features, the benefits, of how to solve problems for other people. And so anytime they're in a scenario, in a conversation, they're selling or scripting or acting as opposed to being in the moment, asking questions, finding out what someone's problem and pain point is, and then digging into the pharmacy and going, well, what if we were able to do this? Or have you ever considered this? And well, we have maybe this solution. I don't know if you ever thought about, right? So
I remember early days of getting into sales. Like I started off automotive sales at 18 years old. I'd been through Joe Verde training, Grant Cardone training. My dad put me through training for 2 years before I was allowed to step on a sales floor.
Yeah.
And I mean, 18 years old, I thought I was coming in. I knew what I was doing. Like I was like, more training than any of these guys.
Get out of the way.
Yeah. So I'm like, I went and got my new slacks. I looked like a 1990-something lawyer coming in there.
Yeah.
And
your uncle's suit.
I know, for real. And nothing was custom tailored to me at that point. But I remember coming in, like the first time, like I get an objection, I'm like,
trained me to do this.
Yeah, my wheels were turning 4,000 miles an hour.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, it had been so scripted in everything I'd learned that I didn't have the knowledge or the experience. And I think that's where the talent comes, is with the experience side of it. And it was like, I was thinking so much about what the person was going to say. I was creating all the objections in my head before. And
now you're no longer in the moment.
You're not in the moment at all. And
then
I remember somebody would like say something. I'm like, shit. I'm like, I have no idea what they just said.
Yeah.
Like
the sweat and the prickles.
You're like, where do I go from here?
Your ears are like duk 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 duk.
You're like, what do I say? I don't even know what they said to me. I saw their mouth moving, but I was thinking about what I was going to say back.
Yeah.
But I didn't listen to what, like, that didn't line up with my script. Fuck.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, you're
But
not following the script.
yeah.
I'm on script. You're not on the script.
You're messing this
Here,
up.
read this.
Yeah.
But that not only happens in sales, it's in every aspect of life, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
like the passion and vision thing you were talking about earlier is when you try to force it, it doesn't work. It has to come naturally. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. And it kind of makes sense because we talk about it. No matter what you're doing in life, you're selling. You're selling yourself to a girl. You're selling yourself to a job. You're selling to a customer.
Yeah.
But you can't force it. There's a certain point in any position or any role that it just clicks. I feel like you get that almost finesse level. Like when we're talking to clients, you can't just teach someone how to do it. They have to see you do it a certain amount of times to where they realize, okay, this is how it goes. And then it clicks in their head and they just get it.
Yeah.
I think when Philip first started at MMG, he thought I was going to have this like sales
Playbook.
process.
I mean, like, here's the book.
Yeah. And he goes, so they're coming in here shortly. He's like, what do you need to know? I was like, nothing, dude. I'm good. I'm like on the phone, like doing some other shit. He's like,
What do you mean?
They're going to be here soon. Like, he's like freaking out. They're like,
You're going to ruin this for me.
Yeah,
Right.
He's like, dude, my first appointment, they're going to be here soon. I'm like, dude, I heard you the first time. I know that they're coming. I'm not deaf. And so then I'm like in my office, I'm like jacking around doing something. And then I'm like talking to Adam, and you can see like Phil's like pacing. And he's like looking like, what is Dan going to do to get ready for this? And the guy gets,
He's been getting ready for 20 years.
Guy gets there. I was like, walk down to my office and introduce myself. And I started asking questions about his business. And I was like, I want to find out what you guys doing. What are your goals? What are your where are you trying to go?
Yeah.
Like, what are the pain points that your clients have? Like, who's your target audience? Like all this stuff. And I started like just going through the whole thing, learn about these guys, what they like to do in their free time. Like, are these guys I'd sit and have a beer with? We go through this whole thing, and the guys
Shout out to Captains on that.
yeah. But it was like we get
I
done.
was going to ask who it was.
Yeah.
Captain Sports Lounge.
But we get done, everything like, yeah, we're ready to go. I'm like, set up onboard and everything, and we get done, and Philip's like, you guys like didn't really talk that much about market, like you didn't sell them anything. I was like, I just educated them on like what they were doing. I'm like, they're looking for a solution. They didn't come here if they weren't looking for a solution.
Right.
I go, if somebody's looking for a solution and they come in our walls and we leave, then we didn't provide the correct solution to their problem. I go, they came in with a problem and they left with the same problem. I go, so the same thing is like, I told new salespeople in the car business after I figured that out, I was like, every single person out there is in the market for a car. You have somebody that has no car that needs a car, or two, you have somebody that has a car that's willing to trade it in for the right thing. But the deal has to be correct. Like, I'm not actively looking for a vehicle right now. Some sales guy out there, if he had the right truck and he sent it to me and sent me the right numbers on it, I'm driving to the dealership tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, everybody is in market. And it's the same thing with business owners. Every business owner, every Fortune 500 company out there is paying for marketing. Your biggest players in the business world pay for marketing. So it's like, they're all looking for it. They're just looking for the correct solution. For when they come in, if we educate them on what we have, and if it fits to be the solution to their problem, then they'll use us.
Yeah.
If not, we leave friends, and it wasn't a sale, but that's where I think we get done. And Philip's like, look at me, he's like, bro, like they're like on board this week. I'm like, yeah, dude, that's just like how it goes. And I think he thought there's like some magic to like what I did, and I'm like, dude, that's literally like I just sitting there with like they're normal people like you and I.
Yeah.
I just want to help them solve whatever their problem is.
Yeah, but you had the 1,000 other appointments before that to know that.
I've fucked up a good amount of them.
1,000%, right? So yeah, I mean, that's everyone's like, well, what's the process? Well, the process is the process. Like, there's a certain amount of competency or reps that you got to get in that you can't cut. There's no cutting. You can study. Here's the thing: you can read all about push-ups and not get any benefits from them.
Yeah.
You don't have to know anything about push-ups, but if you do them every day, you get the benefits from them.
And
There's so many
better
people,
at them by
right?
doing it.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many people that study sales so much and don't make a single call, don't get on another appointment.
That's not just that's in marketing, that's in business, that's in everything.
There's
in everything,
so
for
many
sure.
experts in theory that never get down and push.
Yeah.
That never get to an appointment and get faced with a because if you haven't been in an appointment and you go, you're not in sales.
Yeah.
I remember getting on the phone going, good talking, and like hang up. I had no idea what to say next. They got me so hard.
I've listened to I've told every salesperson that comes on, like at MMG, we just started sales forefront in January. Like 4.5 years, we haven't had a sales forefront. Right. Everybody that we've acquired has reached out to us. Where it's like, I want to prove the model with what we did first. Now that it's proven, now it's time to go to market. So like right now is when we're actually going to market. I make every one of these guys do cold calls every day. And I listen to them, and they are atrocious.
Yeah.
But it's like
it's glorious.
But it's like I'm like, I go. I remember when I first got in the car business, I was the worst. I had done all this training, but I get on a call, and if it didn't fit my script, off the rails, train derailment. It was a disaster. And then my dad would play him because all of our calls were recorded. So he'd play him in front of the whole sales team the next morning and just humiliate the fuck out of me. Like. It was literally something that if my dad didn't, like, if he wasn't an owner in the dealership, it wasn't my family, I would have gotten up, hit that dude in the face, and left.
You want to talk about hair standing up on the back of your neck is when you're about to go into the training meeting knowing that you're going to listen to your call. The same thing has happened to me. I'm sitting there like, I'm not this nervous to get on the phone. I'm not even going to talk to anybody.
Yeah, you want to go next level. Yeah. You put a camera in the corner of the interview, like a live face-to-face. And now you start watching your face-to-faces. You want to start like go next level. So beyond tonality, beyond the words, like what's your body language doing? Yeah. How are you connecting? Where are you looking? Yeah. Like if you want to go to the next level of like really upping your communication skills, you record your live stuff.
Yeah, but it was like pretty wild on like
when don't get any ideas on that.
But it's funny. It's funny when they start doing when they start doing cold calls. I'm like, this is a requirement that you do every single day. I was like, no negotiation. I go, this is the hard waters that you have to go navigate to become good. Because if you can't become good on the phone, you'll never become great in person.
Yeah.
My dad didn't let me take lot ups. Didn't let me get warm leads. When I got in the car business, I called leads that were like 2 years old. Mm-hmm. These people are like, delete my fucking number, and like yelling at me on the phone. I'm like, good talk. Like, and like, I'm literally like, dude, I've had like 100 people tell me to fuck off by noon. And you want to talk about a shot to the ego? The ego was like, I was yay tall, like at that point. And they're calling and they're like, yeah, I talked to that guy. He said he's pretty happy with his marketing. I don't think that went well. I'm like, did he tell you to fuck off? And they're like, no. I'm like, good call. But they'll say something. They're like, I've sat out there in the way that they just don't have the verbiage. They don't have. I always look at it as lack of knowledge to lack of execution. The knowledge side is just missing. So I'll sit out there, listen. Second they drop a call, I'm like, why'd you miss that? And they're like, well, he said he was happy with his marketing. I was like, I'm looking at his Facebook. I'm like, dude hasn't posted in 2 months. I was like, I'm looking at his website. All of his links are broken. And I was like, I would have called him out who he's paying. I'm like, dude, who are you paying? And what are they doing? Like, just a little bit of knowledge goes a long ways. But it's just going through that hard phase of, once again, like you said, unless you've had that like, abort. This guy's calling me and hang up. Like,
my name's not mad anymore.
Yeah. But it is going through that. And I think probably the theater side was something that helped a lot with.
Oh, it was the biggest unfair advantage that I had in the game, period. So, like, I got into real estate in 2010 after, like, going into retail, and someone gave me Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I was like, what is this? I was like, there's real estate and there's assets, and in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he's like, go to mastermind groups, learn about investing, be an investor, but, like, go to the groups. And I was like, okay. So I went to KCIG and Mari meetings, and I was a wholesaler immediately, like everybody in the meeting. Didn't do anything. I
will say, in the real estate world,
we talked about this in the past podcast.
I do have a lot of like, I keep a very high wall up for the real estate world.
Uh-huh.
My wife's in the real estate world. She does very well for herself, but it's like there's this wall of like, I feel like a lot of people out there that speak like they're the biggest dog in the room, and I'm like, you ain't doing shit.
A lot of theory
like,
experts.
If somebody has MLS access, I can see your stuff.
Yeah, somebody is like sitting out there, and like Masses looked him up, and she's like, I'm like, dude, I met this guy. He said he was doing this, this, and this. And she's like, she's like, you
ain't doing shit.
You fucking blew a bunch of smoke up your ass. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, yeah. So I've built this wall like for the real estate world because I don't think I think real estate and car, we were about the same level of what we were doing out there, because I told her when she first started selling real estate, like, I took a lot of pride in selling cars. And I feel like that's very uncommon. Like,
well, because you believed in what you were doing. You were providing somebody a solution that was of value for them. Like,
so
there's nothing cooler than having a badass car or a car that was better than what you just had.
Which I feel like the sale of a car wasn't that unique. What I prided myself a lot on was after the sale, which I feel like that's where a lot of people get a bad taste in their mouth for the car world.
Sure.
I focused on having the highest level of communication with that person for the lifetime of them having their car.
Yeah, right on.
So I call them the day after. I call them 3 days after. I call them 7 days after. I send them a thank you card. I send them a thank you card. I send them a birthday card every year. I send them a birthday card on their car's birthday. Like, the whole nine. I would help them with service. Like, I would go pick their cars up and drop something else off. Like, our service didn't offer that, but I did that. Yeah. But it's because that's the whole experience. It wasn't just, most people sell something and then they're on to the next deal. And my wife, when she got into real estate, I was like, I'm going to tell you 2 things. I go, when you're selling someone a house, you try to talk them out of buying every house. When you find the house you can't talk them out of, you found the right one. So I try to talk people out of buying cars. If I found a car that I couldn't talk them out of, then I knew I found the right car. And then I was like, 2, all you focus on is after you sell someone, focus on being that person that goes above and beyond for them for the lifetime of you knowing. So it's like, now I come home and like Cinco de Mayo, our whole entire living room, our kitchen, everything's filled with these fucking baskets with things. And her whole car is just like, she's coming back and forth to the house, filling up. Like, the agent that works for her too is like coming back and forth.
All the Popeyes.
They do stuff on every holiday, but it's so above and beyond. And she has stacks of gift cards in her office, or it's like every birthday, and then it's like the house birthday, like the same thing. But she has spreadsheets on like what has to happen every single month. Yeah, and that's a level of finesse that a lot of people don't bring to market.
Correct.
A lot of people don't bring that after sales, like you said, after the transaction. People are only focused on the transaction. Yeah, and then when that happens, it's just like
the most valuable person to you is the person that you've already sold.
Yeah. Your
current clientele. You did all the work. Yeah. They're already there. Now they're a raving fan.
Yeah. And they're going to sell for you.
For sure.
Yeah. And most people jump ship on that person faster than anybody.
That's the worst part of the industry that people really miss out the most on. Right.
So jumping into real estate, you start going to some of these masterminds.
Yeah, and then they were talking about all these ways of like buying real estate with no money and no contracts and no nothing. I was like, this is perfect because I have no money and I have no idea. And
that's kind of how it all goes to market.
This is so good. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no money. And then they got a bunch of Carlton sheets, like no money down in the 90s cassettes. And I'm just playing them. I was like, is this real? And then
it's free money.
And then so I just was like, I don't feel right. I don't understand it. I don't want to screw this up. I don't want to make somebody homeless. And so I was working at a for-profit school in the financial aid office at the time, and my supervisor gave me time to get my license. And I was like, listen, if I get my license, then I'll at least know like transactions. I'll be able to help people, and I'll be able to give people deals on this super secret place where all the deals are hidden called the MLS.
Yeah.
And so when I got my license, one of the investors that I met through a networking event, and he was also an immigrant from the Netherlands, Frank, and he's like, hey, can you help me? He's like, I do deals in Missouri. And
you told him you had all the secret deals?
I told him I had access to the MLS. And he knew. He's like, that's what the deal. He goes, so you can help me with comps? And I was like, absolutely, I can. And I'm like, what's a comp?
Yeah.
What is a comp? What even is that? And he's like, if you can help me get value from the Missouri deals, I'll just send you all my leads for Kansas. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do with those? He goes, well, and I've been shadowing him for a little while, and he goes, well, just talk to them like you would as an investor. And then if they have any equity, like sell their house as is. And I was like, we can do that? And he goes, yeah, just do that. So I would do that. And that first year I was working maybe 4 or 5 hours a week, running his leads. And I did like 7 transactions. I tripped over like 7 deals that year. Whenever I got this thing in the mail that I didn't expect called a 1099, my wife and I are looking, and I was like, oh, I got to pay taxes on this money. I have no idea.
This is some bullshit.
I'm looking at my 1099 against my W-2, and I was only making like $35,000 at the time, and I made like almost the same amount in my 1099 off of 7 deals on 5 hours a week. And I looked at my wife, and I was like, what are we doing? Like what do we do? And I'm like, I don't know. And she goes, and I was like, but something's got to give. We had a brand new baby. We had more month at the end of the money. And like, in order for me to get promoted in the job that I was at, somebody had to die. And so
you were playing offing someone at that time?
Right. So I was like,
this guy's got to go away.
Option 3. So I went back to my office, and I was
murder.
I was a part-time agent at the time. And I went back to the office, and I knocked on my team leader's door, and I was like, hey, who's killing it in our office that I could talk to? And he's like, well, there's this guy, Brian. You probably know Brian Huff.
Oh, yeah.
You know Huff. Right. So at that time, it was 2011. I don't remember how old he was. It was like 25, 26 years old. He was killing it.
The dude's
Bro,
an animal.
he was absolutely killing it. And he was like 4 or 5 years into the business, and I think he was going to do like almost $500,000 in GCI. And I knocked on his door, and it was like him and an admin and his mom, maybe. Like, I don't remember exactly.
So I have heard, like, I know him, talked to him in Crossing multiple times, like ran into him. I've talked to multiple guys on his team. You know how we're talking about mastering the phones?
Listen.
I still have heard to date that they're like, if you ever hear him get on the phones, like he goes, they have said that his wealth is built from his phone skills.
So I knocked on his door, and I was like, hey, Brian, Rob mentioned that you're killing it. And I really want to learn, like, what do you do? How do you get in your business? He goes, well, I call for sub owners. I call expires. I call my database. I was like, can I just listen? He goes, sure, come on in. And I sat in a corner of the office, and he's like, in one hand, he's like uploading pictures to the MLS, and he's dialing numbers on the phone off of another list on his second screen. And in a half hour, I think he dialed 10 numbers, talked to 8 people, set 4 appointments in a half hour. He was just calling FSBOs. And I'm sitting there going,
They still say today that he shuts his door, shuts himself in his office every day, has a
nonstop. He never stopped. Never stopped. And I'm just sitting there going, that's it? And I'm like, in a half hour, he set 4 appointments. And I'm sitting there going, what that, like, huh? And I was like, hey, you were like saying the same thing over and over to these calls. He's like, and no one was cursing, no one was hanging up, no one was yelling, no one was calling you a slimy salesman. And he goes, yeah, no, there's scripts. It's a script. And I was like, there's scripts for this shit?
Magic.
And I'm like, when was anyone going to tell me there's scripts for this? I was like, do you have any idea what my background is? I've got a master's of fine arts in acting and directing and emphasis in classical theater. Like,
scripts?
Scripts?
I'm here for it.
I'm like, scripts? There's scripts? I was like, you're not even that good, bro. But he was super good. And I'm like, I literally was like shaking. And I went to the computer room, and I pulled up the computer, and I started typing up my resignation letter. I dated it 90 days out, and I printed out 3 copies. I went down the hallway, knocked on the door, and I knocked on.
You gave somebody 90 days? Wow.
Well, I dated it 90 days for me because I knew I needed to create a runway. So I go to the team leader's office, and I was like, Rob, I am quitting my job in 60 days, and I need you to hold me accountable. He goes, that is super exciting. You should not do that. And I'm like, why? He goes, have you seen your pipeline? I was like, what is that even?
Hey, now I don't know what comps are. I don't know the pipeline.
I have no comp, but
I found out there's scripts.
But listen, there's these people out there, they're called FSBOs, and they love scripts. So I need you to help hold me accountable. And then I went home. I gave my wife another one, the other one. And I'm like, hey, in 60 days, we're going to do it. And she goes, are you sure? And I'm like, no. Yes, no, I don't know, but something's got to change. And then I kept one in my bag on top of my laptop every single day. Next day I went in, pulled up my laptop, opened up Craigslist where all the FSBOs were hiding. And then I was like ready to pick up the phone. And then all of a sudden I'm ready to dial the number.
Your fingers froze.
And I'm like, what is even happening right now?
You forgot the script.
And I'm like, what? What is happening? I was like, yesterday I ordered a pizza. No problem.
Yeah.
And now I got to call this person and ask for business. And I'm like, what is even happening? And I stared at that number for like an hour. And then I helped somebody with the printer. And then I did some, and then I went home.
He's like, do I call? No, I'm going to be IT guy instead.
I'm here to help.
IT seems more exciting.
I'm here to help. I'm going to serve. I'm going to work on somebody's business card. And I went home, and my wife's like, well, how'd it go? And I was like, oh, so good.
I fixed the printer.
Oh, man. I sold my face off today. And I just remember going upstairs, looking at the mirror and going like, looking at myself going, this is bullshit. I was like, how did I let like whatever feeling of fear and like whatever get in the way of like what I promised everybody downstairs? Next day I went down, opened up the laptop, pulled up my phone. Number was still there. I didn't have to look it up. I just hit. And then I just literally like I hit a green button and I was like, go to voicemail, go to voicemail, go to voicemail. And then next 30, 60 days, I ended up like I picked up like five new listings and 3 new buyers, and then went and I talked to my boss and was like, hey, I unfortunately your services as my supervisor are no longer necessary. I gotta let you go.
Taking my talents to South Beach.
But the whole time, like I was still like my heart was pounding in the back of my mind. I was like, you like ramen? You like living with your in-laws? Like this is what's coming, right? And like all that fear, et cetera, was happening. And then one of the
I'm
things,
gonna tell him that I'm still the IT guy. I'm gonna just pile all this away. Tell him I'm the IT guy.
so like in the middle of all that chaos, though, like and the fear and et cetera, but like I took this massive action. She was like, hey, I have to tell you something, and I'm like, what's up? And she goes, well, 3 weeks earlier, corporate told me I had to cut down our department and we were going to cut it by 1 and it wasn't going to be you. So you just saved someone's job today. And I was like, oh shit. Then I go back to my desk and at 3:00, my phone rings and it says the dean of students. And I pick up the phone and the dean's like, hey, I heard a rumor that you just turned in your resignation for financial aid. Now I can talk to you if it's true. And I was like, it's true. She goes, we have an immediate need for somebody to come in and teach a class in the evenings, 3 nights a week from 6 to 10. Are you free? Can you do it? And I'm like, it's not math, is it? She's like, no. And I'm like, well, what is it? And she goes, it's public speaking. I was like, yeah, I can totally do that. I was like, I'm just curious, what does it pay? And it was exactly what I was making in financial aid, but it completely freed up my days. And then that's when all of it just kicked in. And then there was this 8-week seminar that I jumped into that blew up my business that first year. I tripled my business that first year. And at that same time when I took that class, I remember looking at the instructor going, holy shit, like, how do you become that guy? Because it was this amazing class where they taught like tactics, strategy, skills, but it was also like mindset, personal development, habits, techniques, like on how to become a better whole person. And I'm like, this is fascinating. This is incredible. Like, how do you do that? And then the person sitting two seats next to me was the owner of our office. He's like, what's your name? And I'm like, it's Matt with 1 T. And he goes, Matt with 1 T, bitch. I didn't say bitch, but I just said it. I said it. He heard it. He heard it. But so after that, like, I just started picking things up and going, and I was just, I don't know, I was just weird in the office. I was like, I'm not from here. I don't have a database. I don't have 1,000 relationships that I went to high school with. I got nobody. I got to create relationships. So how do I do that? I got to get really good at generating cold business. And so in my mind, I was going after for sale by owners because Brian did it so well and it looked so easy. And then expireds for me were like scary because an agent already failed and I wasn't that good yet. So like, what am I going to bring to that table? Well, what I didn't know is that most for sale by owners were expireds, but in my mindset allowed me to call them. And I just built my business by calling expireds, generating business, like doing open houses, working leads. And so I just started getting asked like, hey, you want to help others do what you did? And I'm like, I don't even know exactly what I'm doing, but I love teaching. I love education. My heart has always been in coaching and helping others. And I've always been really good at helping somebody kind of work through their shit and connect the dots through action. because a lot of people like get in the way, and
I think to that point, I think there's a lot of people that get where I struggle with a lot of the coaching world is there's a lot of coaching that there's no actionable steps that come out of it. And it's like
too much motivation, too much talk, too much theory.
Theory talk.
Yeah, it really is. Like you live like up here. And the other thing too that I think a lot of coaches miss the mark on is not connecting with someone where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat there and I have a new salesperson come in and I'm talking at $1 million or 7-figure, 8-figure level.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, good for you, fucking pal. Like, trying to figure out how to make my rent.
Yeah.
Like, so there was a point that I was at that spot, like, but it's taking myself back to my position of where I was in the pathway to say, in that journey, this is where I was at that time. How do I connect to that version of myself? What would I tell that version of myself? Because that's how I've always kind of looked at it when I help teach people is moving myself backwards instead of, because there's a lot of early business days I would talk to people. I'm like, great, pal. Like, I know I said I talked with you for an hour, but that was no fucking help. Like,
now what do I do?
Yeah.
What's next?
Move myself out of my business. There's 3 of us, bud.
Yeah.
Like, work on your business, not in your business.
The other 2 are going to think I'm crazy.
Yeah. Like, this sounds like a great plan, but if I pull myself out of the business, there is no business.
Definitely been at like some of those same conferences where just like it seemed like an advertisement for somebody's like accolades, and it was always like I felt like I was ready for the next pitch, and like the real answers were at the next level that I couldn't unlock unless it was 15 or 30,000.
Which my thing is, I do like to when I meet with people, and because we work on a lot of personal development inside of MMG, and like I do like to talk to people about just from a personal level of where I'm at now and how I got there. Where it's more of like showing them my roadmap. And it's not like a accolade movement at all, because there are people out there though that you talk about anything from a financial state, you talk about anything that they are not in a state of, they're not going to be receptive to it. So they're going to look at anything that you say that's above their level as bragging.
Sure.
There are those people out there that I don't think that they're ready for coaching. They're not ready. They haven't had that talk with the man in the mirror yet.
Right.
That man in the mirror, that conversation, that conversation has to happen first.
Yep.
To then say, I myself, I want to move forward, and I am opening the doors for someone to help me. But then when you get into that conversation and you start moving it forward, my thing is the people I look to listen to are people that I want to hear where they're at now, but I want to hear how they got there. I want to know from my position to their position, like, and it helps me kind of formulate that roadmap of how I'm moving forward instead of it's like, oh, this is where I'm at now. There's some coaches just live in their current state. And it's like, they talk about step 1 and they talk about here. So level 1 and level 50, I'm like, great. I'm stuck at level 30. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to get to 35. Like how do I navigate these 5 levels?
Yeah.
To where I think formulating that for different people is huge on coaching.
You're best equipped to help your past self, right? Like where you came from, you know how to get to the next point. And I think that's what so many people miss in all the theory talk and the Ty Lopez's and all the courses and all that shit. Like it's attractive at first, but then you get into it and it's like, it's just like getting into the sales scripts and then realizing, oh shit, it's not going to go exactly how it went for them.
Right.
So I don't know what to do in this situation.
Yeah. So I mean, I had the opportunity to like kind of create some new agent trainings and I was able to bring people in and get them into production quickly and move people forward and get a lot of success. And I was getting a lot of attention from other like brands and recruiters from all over the country. And I was actually being like recruited to Seattle, Washington to start leading and running some really big offices. And I'm like 3-4 years into this game. I haven't sold a ton of business yet, but like I've had a lot of success helping other people get up and running and going. And my wife didn't want to move, and opportunities came here locally, and I had the privilege to take over and run and lead several really big offices here in Kansas City. And then I had the privilege of qualifying and becoming one of the national coaches and trainers for our brand. And I spent 3.5 years traveling around the country in 42 different markets, coaching over 3,000 agents. And that was an absolute dream come true. And then COVID hit.
That's when you were at Bold, right?
Yeah.
KW?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
how we met at the Hearn Group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on. And I love that. In fact, like if I could go back and like wave a wand and COVID never happened, like I'd still be doing it. It was the best gig. But what I didn't realize is there was a toll on my family that was silent, that was being had, that like they were quietly just holding on to. And I didn't realize how difficult and how tough it was for my kids. My kids at the time were like 5 and 8. So we always made it a point going like, hey, well, because daddy's got to go here for 2 or 3 days a week, we get to go to Disney. Or if we get to do this, then we get to go to the beach. Like we get to do 5 vacations a year because I travel. But like when they had a tough day at school and they're crying in bed at night and I'm not available for a FaceTime, they don't care for a Disney. And so there's like these small cuts started piling up, like these tolls against this started piling up. And then COVID happened, and I went back into leadership locally, and I started I was at that point in my career, I was really starting to get kind of stuck. I had no vision of like what the next thing was looking like. I was in a role, and I use that term very specifically, especially with the theater background, is I was in a role as a leader. I had to play a part. And one of the biggest tolls that was taken on me was I wasn't allowed to be authentically me. Like nobody really knew who I actually was. I was really good at being the team leader. I was the #1 recruiter in our region out of 35 offices. I was top 18 out of 832 offices nationwide. I was on stage. I was celebrated in front of the company at our national convention in front of 3,000 other leaders. I just remember taking the microphone off in the green room, walking back through the hallway, and the next speaker was on stage, and it was just like just bright fluorescent lights in this hallway all by myself. All I could hear was my footsteps, and I remember going, "Is that it?" It was such a huge goal for me to be like on stage nationally, be recognized, get these accolades, and I did it. I'm back in the hallway by myself, walking down this hallway by myself, going, shit, like I walked through that door, I'm back at 0. I'm a nobody again. And like my net worth didn't shift. Somebody else's did, but I was nobody else's. So I was stuck. Alex Hormozy talks about it really, really well in some of his podcasts. He talks about being on rock top. And everyone knows what rock bottom is, and everyone's experienced or knows someone who's experienced rock bottom where everything's going wrong. But there's a version of that for those that are in success that, like, according to everybody's metrics, you're winning. According to all the things you're being measured for, you're #1. You're making more money than ever before, but you go home, you can't stand yourself in the mirror. You got to drink yourself to a point where you can even just kind of deal with yourself. Your family barely can tolerate you. Everybody just kind of wants to get away from you. And every day is like a carbon version of the next. And you're just stuck on this mountain going, shit, how do I like?
So the funny thing that when bringing that up, I grew up where my dad was uber successful. I mean, we had planes, big boats, like we lived that life. I think I witnessed more people at rock top that
Self-destructing.
Like when I came through the car business, I was around guys that had endless amounts of money. That were some of the most miserable human beings that you talk about going down that hallway standing by yourself. Like my thing is when I started MMG, I was like, if the people standing around me, I'm like, the day that I buy a jet, it's not an if, but when. I was like, there will be that day.
Yeah.
I was like, if I don't have people to get on it with me, then I failed. Yeah. Acquisition of money is not that hard in our world. Right. Like, I feel like that's actually a pretty easy concept. And I've been around it my whole life. And like, I've seen it firsthand. Like, I know how to make money. But it's like, I've seen a lot of guys that have made a lot of money that they have terrible relationship with their kids. They have terrible relationships with their wife. They have nobody that they work with actually wants to be around them. And it's like, I've made it a point that it's like, I've told my wife, I was like, if I ever become that, I'll close MMG down tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, if it ever gets outside of the lines of what the true principles of the company is, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, my thing is, I pride myself so much in like our whole basement crew still being together. Like,
That's so huge.
but it's, I mean, a little over 2.5 years ago, we stepped out of the basement, and I mean, there's 5 people that walked with me. That there were 6, but there's 5 now. Like, that walked with me, that bet on something that was nothing, and they all came from well off jobs. It wasn't like it was glorious to come work for the guy in his basement. But it's like, I mean, every one of them on their 3 years, I've bought new Rolexes for each one of them. Like, it's something that I pride myself more on that. Those are accolades that I wear on my sleeve 10 times bigger than any amount of money. And it's like, I look at progression forward is, what are those indicators of success? The guys that I sit at the tables with, that I break bread with, that are my people, are people that I respect the relationship that they have with their significant other. It's the person that I respect the relationship with their kids. Where do you prioritize your kids? Like, if somebody prioritizes money over their kids, like, I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how little money you have. Like, you're probably not somebody I run with. Period. Like, take everything else out of it. I just really don't care for, like, you have your priorities wrong. Like, you prioritize working out more than you prioritize being with your wife or significant other or whatever. That person is the person you're going to run with all the time. Like, there's a priority level that you have, and there's a lot of people that set money as number one. I've been guilty of that too. Like, I'm not going to sit over here and say, like, I came out of college and all I lived for was making money. I did that for 3 years, and after 3 years of working 100-hour weeks every single week, like, the money I made from the dealership was more than enough. So I sat there, I'm like, it's not enough, I got to make more. So I opened up a detail company. I'm working 12-hour days, Monday through Saturday. Monday through Thursday, my brother and I clean cars from 8 to midnight. So I ate in the service drive every night with my wife and my brother's wife. Like, the 4 of us would sit there and clean cars till midnight. I sat there, and I remember my wife at one point, she's like, when is enough enough? And I was like, I don't know. Like, because I sat there at that point, and then it was like one day I was looking at that man in the mirror, and I was like, you stay this course, you lose everything. Like, all you're going to have is money. Like, I could have ran that pathway. I could have had a lot of money, and I would not be, this started just shy of 5 years ago. If I would have stayed the route in the car business, Mass and I would not be together. My brother and I would not hang out an hour outside of that car dealership. I would not talk with my dad outside that car dealership. I would sit and live in this house by myself. I wouldn't have time for a social life. I would come home and I'd drink my sorrows away till I went back to work the next day.
Yeah. You got lucky.
It was,
you saw the path in front of you. You got lucky. And in my world, in the coaching, and then personally, like, I was right there on the brink of losing everything as well. And I just remember sitting there on the steps in front of our house, and my wife sitting there next to me, and she's just like, fix it. I don't care what you got to do. Fix your shit. Like, fix it. You don't get to do this. You don't get to do this to our family. You don't get to do this to me. You don't get to do this to the kids. Fix it. Fix your shit. So I made a commitment at that time. I said, all right, anything worth fighting for is worth it when you're fighting with a warrior. And I had somebody that was willing to fight at the same time. And so I also made a commitment going, okay, I'm not going to let this go to waste. I need to document. I need to document this whole process. I need to share the things that I'm doing, the things that we're implementing, the things that are working for us to get through this. And hopefully our story can be somebody's survival guide moving forward. And that's where the book came into play that we just released last week, called Entrepreneur's Regret. and it's the guide to having it all without having to risk it all. And it was like a 2.5, 3 year journey to get there. And I mean, I'm happy to tell you, like, I don't even know if I like told my wife this. I was like, but like, I'm on my second marriage with the same person, and it's like the happiest I've ever been. Like, because we both, like, when we both went to counseling and therapy, or family coach, if you will. I mean, she was one of the things that I admired the most was like, I take ownership as well. What am I gonna do? Whatever it takes. And I was like, let's go.
But
She took ownership, I took ownership, and we went full blast. And it's right now, our life is the best it's ever been and the happiest I've ever been. And like, so that's been the journey here this last while, putting this book together.
But I think when you talk about taking ownership in something, like we run our business, if you read the book Traction,
Mm-hmm.
So I read it early on in business. I'm like, I'm going to do all these things when we get big enough to do these things.
Yeah.
Beginning.
When do we get there?
Yeah. Beginning of 2024, I'm sitting in Mexico on the beach, actually going there, doing food tastings for my wedding in May. That was in Cabo. I'm sitting there and I just grabbed that book on the way out. I like look in my book. I have all these books like I've read. I was like, I want something that I can read while I'm down there. I grab it and I'm sitting on the beach. I'm reading it and it's talking about core values and it's talking about having these principles that you run a business by. I'm like, shit, I totally like blew right by that and didn't do it. It was talking about having a leadership side. It was talking about saying something like, shit, blew right by that and didn't do it. I'm sitting on the beach. I put a group chat together. I'm like, this is our leadership group. And it was like, look, at that point,
come on, guys.
I'm like, this is it. And Matt's just like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm building a leadership group. And I'm going to start building our core values. And our number one core value, like the first one that we put in place, it was just a non-negotiable, was extreme ownership. Like that was number one, the first of the list. And it's like something that Matt and I, in 12 years to being together, that is something that we've always held very high to ourselves, is just taking ownership of what you do. And it's being in the entrepreneurial space, it's something that 95% of things go right, and that's what the company gets. When I get the praise from clients and everything, that's because Logan did a good job. That's because Philip did a good job. That's because everyone in the company did a good job. That's not mine to take. The 5% that goes wrong, that's what I get at. So those are the things that I didn't put a systematical process in place that was effective to where that didn't happen. I didn't educate somebody correctly. I didn't educate somebody on the leadership team correctly to then educate down. Like, that's my fault. But it's taking that ownership level at the very top and then moving that into a leadership side, moving that to our whole company, that it's wild when something happens in the company. I know that Philip could have done it. I 100% know that. And Logan would be standing right next to him. He said, yeah, it's my fault because I didn't do X, Y, and Z. Like, we have a whole company that wants to take blame when something happens. And it's like, in a relationship, and I tell everyone that, like, we built these core values out for the business. If you carry these over into your personal life, I promise you they'll go just as far. Yeah. That Madison is this, she's not going to, something happens, she's like, yeah, it's your fault. Like, I see, like, couples arguing, they're like, your fault. Look, like, I'm like, this is wild. Like, we're kind of watching it happen. I'm like, you know, it takes 2 to tango. I'm like, it's somebody's fault. I'm like, I promise you, it didn't just, like, poof out of the air.
There's this, I can't recall the therapist or the thought leader that shared this, but I was seeing a meme. He goes, when you get into an argument with your spouse, like, let's just talk about the ridiculousness of trying to prove them wrong, or like, when you're in a fight, what's your goal? Is your goal to win? Because if you win, that makes them a loser. So do you want to be with a loser? Like, why are you trying to make them a loser?
Yeah.
And like, and I'm
It's
like,
ego.
ooh, that's yeah. Like, the thing is like, there are no losers and there are no winners. It's like, what am I not learning here? What am I hanging on to that's getting in my way?
So I've always told my wife, and like, it's crazy how it's like progressed over time, but I won't argue with her. I won't. I tell her I don't have conversations out of emotion. I think when you let emotion take over, and in business, it's given me I feel a different level of emotional control, and she's evolved a lot too. But it's like, there's been times that she's fired up, and I'm like, I'm not going to have this conversation right now. I'm like, if you want to go upstairs and come down in 15 minutes when you've cooled off, then let's have a conversation. Like, I know that there's a problem that needs to be solved, but I'd rather talk about it on a level forefront, that neither one of us are speaking from an emotional state.
Right.
Because if I'm speaking out of anger and I say something I don't want to say, you can't take those words back.
Right.
I think a lot of people say things out of anger. They say things out of a state that they don't actually mean what they're saying. But once again, they're trying to say something that they feel that they're going to win. And it's like,
at that point, the damage has already been done.
exactly.
But going back to your point, it's all ego driven. I mean, just like as a business owner, you have to look in the mirror. A lot of people can't even look in the mirror.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have that self-awareness to where they can look at their own ego and check that.
Yeah. Because MMG sinks like a fucking rock to the bottom of the ocean. Most people want to blame it on government. They want to blame it on fucking Steve down the street. Like, who knows? Like, they blame it on the most whack shit all the time. Like, MMG sinks to the bottom of the ocean like a rock. I'm the one that gets to own that. Like, we were in the house. I pulled out $150,000 out against my house to do it all at Facebook ads. I told Mass, I'm going to sink this motherfucker really fast, or I'm going to take it to the moon. One of the two. I was
Take risk. Gotta take
To
risk.
the moon, Alice.
I was like, I'm not going to just sit here and be okay.
Right.
But it was like, if I sunk it, I had already taken ownership of it before it even happened. I was like, at least at that point, I know I tried.
Yeah.
At least at that point, I knew I threw it all at it, and I didn't go in and half-ass it and it sink. Because at that point, we were just kicking the can kind of down the road. I didn't really know what acquisition of work to our side looked like. I wasn't a business owner. I thought I was. Like, I read some books on it, but like, I was like,
Until you put it into practice.
I'm listening to Alex Hermosi podcast, man. I'm a business owner.
I'm in the game.
Like, I could regurgitate like a champ.
Yeah.
Like, to action though, like I wasn't doing any of it.
Right.
Like, you read Traction, and like you go through, I'm like, I've read Traction, like I know what you're talking
Got
about.
the level 10 meetings.
Yeah, I'm like, not doing any of it. Like, and that was like kind of eye opening in the beginning of 24. I'm like sitting on the beach reading this. I'm like, the fuck did I take out of this the first time I read it? I'm not doing any of this stuff. Like, but it's like, it's kind of wild that when you look back at yourself, relationship side, friendship wise, business wise, whatever it may be, what are the actionable things that you've done to make a difference in your relationship lately? What are the actionable things that you've done to make a difference in your business lately? And I even break it down to daily, weekly, monthly. Like, it's, what is that act of kindness I do for Madison every single day?
Nice.
What is that, like in a 7-day period, like we do leadership meetings every Wednesday morning? Like, what are the actionable steps that, like, this morning we had it, like, we have actionable steps that we have to take from today till next Wednesday that we hold that room accountable that stuff happened through the company. But then, like, today we go over everything that happened over the last 7 days. Do we hit the mark on all of it? Absolutely not. But we have a room that keeps us all accountable.
There's an awareness. Yeah, awareness is everything.
Yeah, but it's,
Sure.
I think having those principles and having those things just as a whole, and I think from a coaching world, that's probably, you go into most of the time people think when they go to fix a business, at least from my standpoint, they think it starts in the business side, and it actually starts on the personal
It's all
side.
internal. Yeah, it's personal. Yeah, because there's somebody that's completely destroying it from the inside out.
That was me for a long time.
Self-sabotage, like all the habits, limiting beliefs, programming, all the things that come in there.
Yeah. But so writing the book,
Yeah.
what all does the book cover?
Oh, shoot. So the whole premise or the idea of the book is around. So one of the things I notice is in the entrepreneurial space, every entrepreneur that I talk to, and we talk about, all right, so what's your purpose? What's your why? What's your big why? And they all say the same thing. If I were to quiz every single one of you and say, what's your why? I guarantee you 9 out of 10, it's going to be my family, my kids, my wife, my partner, etc. Everyone says it. And they're the absolute first that we sacrifice as we level up. When we have to come in late or miss a weekend or go on that vacation on the phone. Who do you think's paying for this trip? I got to close this deal. I got to fire Like, so we keep saying all these people that we're doing this for are the people that we're doing it for, but then all of our actions or inactions are all in sacrifice, hoping that in 18 months, we're 18 months away from a little breathing room. I'm 24 months away from the breakthrough. The challenge is we lack the discipline to be all in where we're supposed to be. And our lack of discipline and being all in where we're supposed to be creates guilt and pull in all of these areas. For instance, when you're at work, everyone knows what you should be doing at work. You've got your leading indicators, you've got your metrics, you've got your outbounds, you've got your top of funnel. If you were nailing them, when you get home, if your phone rings and your pipeline's full and you're ahead of the metrics and you're crushing your leading indicators, are you freaking out if you can't get to that call instantly or immediately if you're not in like a crunch time or game time situation? Usually no. The challenge is we dick around and half-ass at work all the time. We're behind on goal. We think the next time we're going to get called into the office is for a 90-day plan versus, so when we're at home, instead of being able to connect with the people that we're home with, when the phone rings, we go, I got to answer that because if I don't answer it, I'm going to miss my numbers. I'm going to miss my target. I'm going to get fired. And all of a sudden, so you were never all in at work. You're not all in at home. And then you're ignoring your physical and your mental health as well, because any act of personal time seems like it's a takeaway from everybody else because you're not present at home. So how dare you take personal time, and even though that personal time physically and mentally helps you in all the areas, like it becomes a vicious circle, and our lack of being all in or being present removes all of our opportunity. So
in that space,
yeah,
because this is something I have a lot of conversations on, and it's like I think there's multiple ways to look at it because I think this comes in like I think the buzzword in our world right now is balance. And it's like
there's no such thing.
And that's where I don't believe that there's a balance in our world at any stage, but there's levels of the game that you're going through to where it's Andy Frisella, for instance, he talks about that there you go through those chapters, there's no such thing as balance. That there was when I started MMG, I sat down and I had a very serious conversation with Madison. And I told her, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to give you my full self for a while. I told her, I was like, if you want me to change our future, give me this time. Mm-hmm. I was like, but it was something that during those times, I know it was not fun for her. But she gave me everything that I needed to be able to level into the next stage of my life. But now we're at a spot that yesterday I came home at 4:00 and we watched 2 movies and just getting to like, I don't have to be on my phone anymore. Like I told her, I'm like, we've built out the system, and it's like the same thing. I'm working with the leadership side. I was like, push things down. Like you have to make that person that you're developing them to be, like to give you that time back. And it's like, I don't know if you read a lot on Patrick Bet-David, but it's like he talks about the survival state. You get into status state, which most people live their whole entire life, and then you go into freedom state. Then you find like after you have to clear that freedom state to ever find the purpose state. Like, and I think that's something that I knew I had to take a different road. That there for a long time, I told her, I was like, 6 months, I'm at the black. I'm like, it's gonna be it. Yeah. And then it's like 6 months, and we're like betting the whole thing again. I'm like, 6 more months, we're there. Like, and I think that at one point, like I remember having a conversation. She's like, it's always 6 months away, and I'm like,
yours is 6. Mine was always 18.
I know. I should.
Always 18.
18 sounds
18 months. 18.
I always think it's 6 sounded better than her. Like,
but when you're in those situations, like we talk about it all the time, like we'll have people that have been with us for 4 months or 6 months or something, and it's just not working. Like I'm just not seeing the result. Like blah, blah, blah. It's like you've got to have the staying power to stay with something for a certain amount of time, which sounds contradictory to what you're saying, and that's a whole separate conversation. But one of my favorite things is like when you talk about being able to do the things like come home at 4:00 and watch 2 movies. It's like, and I love the show Suits, and Harvey says it. It's like, why do you think no one says a word when I come in at 10 a.m.? It's because when I started, I dominated, and they thought I worked 100 hours a week.
That's the thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
so back to your point, there's always seasons, and those seasons have certain expectations. They have to have certain integrations and counterbalance. So, like, it's fun to do like the airy fairy, one size fits all piece to it, and there's no such thing. But it goes back to that: is in whatever season you're in, whatever your role is in, are you crushing when you're there? Are you truly operating at an 8.9 or 9.2 out of 10 in your potential? Because most of the times we're not. Oftentimes we're operating in 4s and 6s because everybody that we're surrounded by are 3s. And so our 4s and 6s get accolades, and we fall in love with the applause of the average. And the reality is we're leaving another 3 points on the table that we could be doing more if we were really getting after it because of who we're surrounding ourselves with or the personal, physical, and mental health that we take on our own. Right? So that energy piece. So through all of these things, like I had to redevelop my core mission statement for my clients, and it turned out to just be simply this: is that I work with entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial parents to get their nights and weekends back through integrating systems, tools, leverage, tactics, and strategies so they can actually be more present instead of having to buy presents to prove to their family that they still love them.
Yeah.
So the book is about presence over presence. It's about being all in when you're supposed to be because you've earned it, because you crushed it here, you're crushing it here, and then any act of self-love is no longer selfish.
Yeah. So the funny thing is when you talk about like putting it all in at work and what does that work day look like? And are you putting in 3 or are you the 4 or 6? Like I had a buddy of mine, Tony Cardella.
Why does that sound familiar?
So he's a platform manager over a bunch of the McCarthy stores, owns Healthy Looks Med Spa. But he came on the podcast. It would have been what?
And that was probably almost 2 years ago.
2 years ago? Probably like right when we first started in the River Market.
Okay.
100 episodes ago.
But
Wow.
he was, he comes on the podcast and he's sitting there and I was, once again, the progression of us moving forward. I'm sitting there, I'm like, dude, I get in bed and I just think all night. Like I can't turn my head off. He goes, you don't work hard enough then. He goes, when you get in bed, he goes, you should be able to fall asleep immediately.
You earned it.
If you worked hard enough.
You earned
He goes, you should be able to, he goes, you should not have the brain power, the ability to stay up and think longer. I was like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. I like go on with it. And then one day I'm like sitting there and I remember getting to the office and just having like, they had literally booked me. It was like the first day I had every hour on the hour booked out. I walked in at the end of the day. I was like, my wife, she's like, you good? I was like, I literally ate, went upstairs, went to bed, and I was like laying in bed as I was like falling asleep. I was like, that's a 10 day. Like, that's what a full day looks like.
Yeah. All on the field.
So I'm
Earned
like,
it.
I was like, he had a point to that. And
Yeah.
now it's like, I look at when I get home, if I'm in bed, I'm not tired. I'm like, motherfucker myself. I'm like,
What did I
bitch. I'm like, you didn't get it today. I'm like, so now it's like, I get home and like, I walk in the door and Madison, she could just see it. She's like, you did it today. I'm like, I only have teller. Like, and I just sit
That's
down and it's
beautiful.
like, but it's like now understanding what that next standard level looks like. Because I don't think I understood what that 10 looked like.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like, yeah, like, look, if all you've ever done is a 7 and that everybody around you is a 5, you have no concept of what 10 is.
Yeah.
You're always the best. You're always outperforming everybody. But until you start to operate and see, you start getting around performers, right? Like it's a different game.
Yeah.
The detail, the intensity, the tracking, the speed of execution and implementation, not the planning, not the drawing, not the blueprinting, but the like, I'm going to fuck this up 5 times before you even try.
Yep.
I've already figured out 6 better ways of doing this than you've got 3 napkins full of bullshit.
If you could ask pretty much everybody that sits
Idea to
around me,
execution.
my idea to execution, like pretty much anything
Now,
is like, I wanted it done yesterday. So
Now.
I come up with an idea.
bring
and
me
it's
3
like,
ways you broke it.
Yeah. But it's, do I mess up a lot of things? And like, it drives my brother fucking bonkers. But like,
Yeah.
I come up with an idea. Normally within 60 seconds, I can sell myself on it that we should go for it.
Yeah.
Like, and it's funny. So Ricky and I, for a long time, like I just didn't. We did a lot of we had personality consultants come through the office, things like that.
Mhm.
And Ricky is much more of like a fine-tuned person. Like I wish I had that trait a lot of times, but he calculates it. Logan like very much calculates things. Like that dude will fucking run. He can run more spreadsheets in like an hour than I could in a month. Like, and I'm like, dude, how did you even fucking make something like this? And it's like same thing was like when Ricky like put something together of like how it's gonna work. I'm like, wow, that's fucking magic.
Yeah, but you need
Like,
each other.
Exactly, and it works
Yeah.
so well together. But for a long time, it created this just like full speed. Like it was a bunch of bulls in a ring that we were just fucking running into each other all the time. Like what? Like
You know what's super fun? So our team, so I have a coaching company called Leverage Agent Coaching, and two of my partners, Michelle and Audra. Michelle is the integrator, like detail person. She loves AI, and so she's like, hey, everyone, send me your behavioral studies, like your personality tests. And she uploaded them all into ChatGPT. And she created a prompt for ChatGPT for the executive leadership on how we should all work together. And ChatGPT profiled all of us and talked about how all of our behavioral dynamics operate within one another and gave each one of us a checklist of things that we got to be doing before we talk to this person, that person, or when there's something that comes up, who's going to experience stress, who's feeling conflict, how do we get buy-in, what are some things that we can, I was like, oh, this is sick. I was like, but that's me. I was like, so Matt's the asshole, and everybody else is like, Audra's the people person, and Michelle keeps us not being bankrupt.
Yeah, it's pretty wild when you look at it though. Like, because I always thought the personality tests were like as hokey pokey as they fucking come. So I'm like, I ain't doing that shit. And then we have a huge client that they have a full-time personality consultant on staff. Like, and this is a monster firm, and he's like, hey, I'll bring him into your office. I was like, nah, dude, don't worry about it. And then
He's like, no.
nah.
Wait,
Don't
just
worry
wait.
about it. And then
We don't
I'm sitting
need-
there. So I'm sitting there. Ricky's wife, Lauren,
Shout
She,
out,
like-
Lauren.
she helps with a ton of stuff. And I'm like, all of a sudden I get this calendar invite, and it's like Monday, 4 hours
Tim Bass.
with this Tim. And I'm like,
4 hours.
I was like, the whole company. I was like, stopping the whole company for 4 hours. I was like,
you know what that costs?
yeah. So I'm literally like, I'm about to fucking explode.
You shut us down for a week.
Yeah. So
At
I'm
that
like,
time.
and the day before that, I talked to Madison about giving more trust to the people around me, letting them like make moves and not like micromanaging people and not like not compressing what they're trying to do as a person. So like first person I called was Madison. I was like, can you believe this shit? I'm like, I have 4 hours with a person. Like this hokey pokey bullshit. Like I'm pissed.
This airy fairy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so bought in. In the whole 4 hours, I'm like,
No way.
I'm like,
No way.
This is crazy cool. I'm like,
Cool.
by the time I'm like, dude, this is why have we not been doing this? But it was all of a sudden like I could take like each person and like I could visualize now like why we had these problems
Yep. How to win with people now.
and what was causing them.
Yeah.
And it was crazy that like just going over like each person, I figured out so quickly. I'm like, oh, that's why I have the problem here. That's why we have the problem here. And it's like it wasn't because we had problems with each other. It was just our personality types think differently in the way that we operate, the way we process things.
Yeah.
I never really understood that, but that was the level of thinking that I feel like that was actually a big key indicator of like MMG taking steps forward. Because at that point, I think it really started leveling up, thinking about how others think.
And that's how higher level organizations scale, is when it starts moving away from just the steak and like understanding what's behind the sizzle. And like it's the soft skill stuff as opposed to just metrics, outputs, results, 100%. Right? Like it's that holistic understanding approach of like, there's a lot of ingredients into this.
Yeah.
And there's nuance. And then like the difference between like 3 Michelin stars and not is like the balance of the nuance that creates an experience that's really, really incredible. And that's where like the art of business comes into play.
Have you read, was it Unrelentless Hospitality?
Oh yeah, unreasonable hospitality.
Or
Will Yarda.
Yeah, but it
he
was
was a
like,
keynote at our last convention. It
Oh.
was fucking stupid good.
but like when reading that, like him talking about like a Michelin star restaurant that most people think about as just a food forefront. They
It's
talk
the
about
experience.
the experience in the service forefront.
Yeah.
That those New York restaurants that the waiter would make sure that if you had money in your meter, that they would go out and they'd put money in your meter so you didn't have to think about
Yeah.
that. That when you're ordering water, that they're doing numbers behind their back based on if you were wanting still water, sparkling water, and then they're bringing it to you while that person's still standing there. Like those are like the fine details, and it's like I feel that's what made Walt Disney great. Like that's what made the greats, the titans of the world, the Jeff Bezos of the world. Like he only like, I think sometimes they can get frustrated with me because I'm like client experience. Like I eat, sleep, breathe. Like I get up in the morning, like when I walk in the office, like I'm thinking of like somebody's walking through. I'm like, the floors aren't vacuumed right. Like if you can ask them, I'm like running around with the vacuum fucking all
Every
the time.
morning. Every morning. he
But it's
comes
like,
in,
but it's
get
like
it back.
I want to vacuum. Like I want to make it where it's like somebody comes in. It's like the level that, and I still feel like I'm missing the mark.
I mean,
so
Andy
much.
talks about the piss on the seats or the
Yeah.
or the water on the sinks. Like
Yeah.
The
if
spots on the
everyone's
mirror.
not taking ownership
Yeah.
to like just clean your shit.
Yeah.
Like we all have this job.
Yeah.
That's
Spots on the mirror in the
that's
gym.
that's that buy-in. That's that level. It's a separator.
It is, and it's like I feel like when somebody comes in, they pay attention to every single thing.
The way you
If I
do
went
one
to-
thing is the way you do
Consciously or
everything.
unconsciously.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Consciously or unconsciously. You're winning people
Uh,
consciously and unconsciously.
Yeah, and it's from if they come in and they go to the restroom there. Like one of the big reasons I pulled the trigger on our sales office was how nice the restrooms were that were attached to it. They have gold. It's all black marble, gold tops, everything. I was like, oh yeah, this is the mark. Like,
They're pretty nice.
yeah, but it was just like that level of what it was. Like
for sure.
we have a pallet of water delivered every month that has our logos on it. Like the way we do our business cards, the way that anything you get from us is soft touch. Like and it's like I sit there and I pick apart every single like piece of the business, and it's funny because people come in, they're like, this is legit. I'm like, I'm missing the mark big right now. I'm like, I can sit there and tell you 15 things that we need done, but I can't
Sure.
get them done fast enough. Like a guy's building our receptionist desk because I looked at receptionist desk for like 4 weeks. I'm like on Marketplace every day. I'm on Nebraska Furniture Mart. I'm looking everywhere. I'm like, dude, I can't find anything that's like to our level of what I want.
That first impression.
Now it's
Yeah.
all going to be custom made in metal with our M on the side, with our logo on the front, lit and everything. And it's like, and then we're walking through the front of the office. I'm like, we're gonna have that sitting up here. Get epoxy company out here this week. I want it all black and gold swirled when they come in. I'm like, I want a 6x6 foot circle rug with a crown when you walk in. It's just like that's how people are gonna judge it all the way through. To the signage when they were doing the sign outside, they're like, we could do it half the size and make it cheaper. I'm like, I want that thing 60 foot long. When they come in, like I've had business owners come in, they're like, what did you pay for these signs? I was like,
Whatever it took.
yeah, but it was like,
Oh.
I was like, but it's
Well-
just hitting that mark on all of it.
That's where it's hard too to keep that going, like down line. Like I think for the hardest time or for the longest time, you probably felt like you had a hard time translating that to all of us. But now it's the same thing. Like when I walk through the office, TV's not on, music's not playing. There's a Jolly Rancher wrapper on the floor. It's like, guys, you walked by this 3 times. No one picked it up. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
We're better than that, right? Like I don't walk by stuff like that and just think, oh, it's okay. It's just a little wrapper, a piece of confetti on the floor. It's like the little details, the specs on the mirror, you know,
Yeah.
the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Yeah.
Everybody sees that, whether they say that they do or they tell you that they saw or thought that way, they do in the back of their head.
100%.
But
100%.
there's a lot of people that talk about it, but you look at their surroundings and it's not like you can tell when you come in my garage, like it to the nines, like it's spotless all the time. Like this garage is, you could walk in here 7 days a week and sit down and podcast. Like my office is at work, like I wipe down my desk every day. Like they're vacuumed every single day. Like it is something that my desk, we could leave straight from here, walk straight into my office and sit down and have a meeting, and you would not be able to find a piece of anything out of place.
He can be there. He cannot be there all day, and I'll have a meeting at the end of the day, and he'll come over to that office because he's at HQ, and it's like it's pristine every single time.
It's like the way that my chairs sit, like
It's all the same.
it's a problem, like, but it's like It's definitely something though that it just. I think about how someone else perceives it. That if somebody came in and they could pick out one thing, like I've been trying to find these like I had these huge windows in the sales office, and the blinds aren't the.
There's way too much natural light.
Well, they're not the right color. I have these gray blinds that just don't match the aesthetic of my office, and it drives me nuts. And I sit there and people come in, I'm like, what if somebody says like, hey, the gray doesn't match in here?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's
Can't have it.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't want it. Like, and it's like to the bourbon bottles I put in there. Like it's thought out to every piece of it. To the books that I have sitting, I have John Wayne books up there. I have Rolex books up there. I have high-end car books sitting up there. Where people ask about the books, to the books I picked to put in that I've read. I have my Patrick Bet-David books I've read. I have Traction. I've bought multiple versions and put in both offices. Mm-hmm. Like, you want to start a conversation about that? Let's talk about that. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna find out a lot more about a business when we're talking about that. Yeah. If I have to spend $9 to put another one of them in the other office, how many conversations has that book started in my first office? So it's just like Walt Disney thought about the trash cans. He thought about the concrete below people's feet. He thought about those things all day, every day, but he was obsessed with the client experience. Yeah. Why do you spend what you spend to go to Disney World over what you spend to go Worlds of Fun?
Yeah, it's experience.
For sure. So it's
the magic.
It is. So it's like, I feel like any business can create magic. Most people think if they're not in entertainment, then they can't create it. Why does somebody spend what they spend to go to Eddie V's over Texas Roadhouse? Like, I talk about that so much. And it's, I don't know, that's, once again, am I right in thinking that way? I don't know. There's a lot of people who have built businesses off other things. Like, I think about what that feel of what my ideal is. I mapped out what a business I wanted to have looked like. I wanted something that nobody could walk through and pick out a single thing wrong.
And you've always created the company on how that other person feels, because that's what they remember. It's not about what you said. It's not about this. It's how they felt. Yeah. When they walk in those walls, that's what sticks when they leave.
That's true. Yeah. That we truly care about clients that we work with. I think that's what was missing in our industry a lot. Was people went in, it was a transactional movement. I feel like when people come in, it's you're sitting down with a friend. It's a much more warm, inviting feel. Yeah. And it's educating them. Yeah. We're not trying to sell. People come in, enjoy the environment, enjoy what we have. We have every type of drink you can think of. You want to drink high-end wine? We got high-end wine. You want to drink high-end bourbon? We got high-end bourbon. You want beers? We got beers. You want Coke? We got Coke. You want LaCroix? We got LaCroix. You want water? You tell me what you want to drink. But it's like, how do you feel when you leave there? That when people leave there, 9 out of 10 times, like we have a guy today, like he want to take pictures with us all before he gets done.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Like they're jazzed to be there.
Yeah.
That's the feeling that people should have.
To be part of the story.
They should feel good about it. Yeah. Like that's the same thing I did in the car world. I mean, I ran that vacuum every day up at the dealership. It was like when the rug was up front that was dirty, like it drive me nuts. I'm like, you walk in, first thing you're gonna see is dirty rug. Like we'd sit right now at 7, polish the floors on Sunday. Like I just think there's a level of business that's been lost in our world today.
It is just a level of care and understanding. Like it translates down to like at the end of every onboarding, at the end of every strategy call, like the thing that we try to relay to our team is that if we get off the end of a strategy call or we end an onboarding, like if the business owner doesn't feel like we care as much about their business as they do, we haven't done our job correctly. We haven't asked the right questions. We haven't gotten the right feedback from them. Like we haven't come up with the right ideas. Like we truly are a business partner. We're not a vendor. Like we're not a marketing vendor. You know, we are a partner in business with you. When you succeed, we're going to succeed. And you know, that's business. Like when you win, we'll win. But your success comes first to ours. Like we care about you more than we do about our time. An onboarding scheduled for an hour and it goes an hour and a half. I don't care. Right? Like that's the way that we operate.
So in the entrepreneurial space, on the coaching forefront, how many like entrepreneurs have you said you'd like work with per se?
Like just over 3,500.
Just a few. Wow.
I mean, in group settings and then at a one-on-ones, I'd say like my one-on-one clients, I've had several hundred. You know, just like my dedicated one-on-ones over the last couple of years.
So are you still real estate side? What are you still actively working on real estate side? Are you actively working on the coaching side more? Like, what's the kind of what's that look like?
So I've been pretty much out of production for the last 2-3 years. I'll do a deal or two here and there if I've got a client or a referral that's like, hey, I just only want to work with you. Cool. My license is active. I'll do a listing or a buyer if I need to. But I've got a team right now. I've got 140 agents in my organization in a couple different states that I send out a lot of business to. I'm also now the regional director for our company in the Midwest. So I'm in charge of 5 states, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, and South Dakota as the director of growth. So I'm helping our influencers and agents and teams that have relationships with other independent brokers or large teams that are looking to make a transition into our model. So that's most of the conversations and consultations that I have are with independent broker owners that have like 30, 50, 60, or 100 agents that are like just drowning silently, privately. No one knows. Everyone thinks they're killing it. They're barely keeping it open. They're doing deals to just keep the thing afloat, and they're like, can you help? And so we've got solutions for them. So that's what I do on the corporate side. And then I keep anywhere from 8 to 10 one-on-one clients pretty consistently on my roster that I work with that help them. And they're at various different stages of scale, whether they're individual agents that are now looking to like start to build an organization, or I've got a team of 15 agents that do about 300 transactions and a couple $100 million that I work with on that side as well. So it's a variety. Kind of keeps you on my toes. Not bored.
Doesn't sound like it. Sounds like you got a few things going on.
Yeah.
But I definitely think I just looked out at time. I definitely think you're somebody we could sit here and talk for hours.
Oh, like Joe Rogan can eat shit. Like,
yeah,
we could,
for real. Like,
yeah, we could do this for 3-4 hours.
Yeah, we could sit and do this all night. So it's definitely something I want to have a part 2. We'll have another podcast.
Oh, all day. That'd be fun. Anytime.
I very much enjoyed your story. Very intriguing, and I mean, you've mastered the storytelling side well. Like,
thank you.
You've done a good job, and I just really executed at a lot of different points, and that's where I look at when people see opportunity and they capitalize on it. Like, I always just have mad respect for those people. Like, so seeing that opportunity and jumping on it, and once again, kind of taking on that fear that lives inside that most people never do. I commend you for that. And
that's the next book.
Yeah. So I'm working on 2 books right now.
Are you?
Yep. I'm going to say I'm not a writer, but I have been writing a good amount. I've wrote more in the last 2 months than I think I did my whole entire school career.
Let's talk offline. I've got somebody you got to meet that'll help you finish this out.
Yeah. So I have definitely. I know I'm just jotting down all my ideas and then I'll have it written out. But it's, I think every story is worth telling. I think for a long time I didn't think my story was worth telling. Oh, yeah. And I think after I started writing things down, I was like, you know what? It's gonna be called Every Story is Worth Telling. Like, and
I love it.
That's book 1. The other one is more for early entrepreneurs that I think a lot of stuff is very high level. Once again, you can read the Hermosies of the world. You can read all the big players out there. And
$100 million offer.
Yeah, you're reading all these things, and I'm like,
how about $1 million offer?
How about my $100 offer?
Yeah. How about I figure out how to make
I've got
payroll.
a $7 offer.
Yeah. How about I make payroll on Friday? That would be awesome. But no, I appreciate you coming on 100%.
No, total honor. I'm
it was
so
great.
grateful to be here. I think you guys are so badass. I've been following you forever. So this is kind of, I was talking to my wife. I was like, it's so weird. I watch these guys. I got invited in. It's like so kind of cool. Kind of fangirling over here.
Where can people find the book, find you?
Amazon. Entrepreneur's Regret on Amazon.com. And I've got a 12-week workbook and journal that's going to go along with the book.
Oh, very cool.
So
awesome.
It'll be like a daily prompt of like actions, reflections, and then takeaways from the day based on the chapters as you go through the book as well. So it's not just a book to read and go like, oh, cool story, Matt. There's some, excuse me, man. Edit that out. There are some tactical and tangible exercises and takeaways from the book that hopefully can help somebody veer down the path correctly if you're on the edge or on the brink. Right?
So we'll make sure that is queued in text below. Xavier's got us handled there.
Right on.
So, but thank you much.
Actually, if anybody from the podcast wants just, I don't know how we could set it up. Like I'll give you guys the workbook to give out for free. Anyone who watches it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll figure that out afterwards. We'll have that link below.
Just reach
too.
out to any of us.
Yeah. Reach out to any of us on here. Anybody at the MMG team as a whole.
Yeah.
And, but no, this was great.
Cool.
Thank you guys.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Woo.
SM3
Sir.
podcast. Peace. Killed it.
That's it, dude.
Job,
Thanks,
man.
guys.
That was really
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the M3 Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Want to learn more? Check us out on Instagram at Moss Marketing Group, on Facebook at Moss Marketing 58, or on our website at mossmarketinggroup.com.